You're on the left, I'm on the right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is quote unquote live, but I'm 99% sure I have this set on private.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, it should be private. Cool. All right. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you jumping on, man. Um,
Of course.
yeah. Yeah. So I don't know how much you know about who I am or what I do, but just in case maybe you did some homework before you came on. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, my background's in mechanical electrical engineering turned software engineer. So
Mm-hmm.
essentially, I decided I got bored. I want to do every discipline at least a little bit.
Okay.
Kind of
Nice.
took the approach of the Greeks. But yeah, and I've been a long time investor just in general. Got started off when I was really young with my stepfather. Luckily, I got into it at a young age, and yeah, this just became a great kind of convergence of things between investing in Tesla and starting a YouTube channel and seeing people like Dave Lee and just thinking bigger picture about how do I leave a legacy for my future kids and other people and share things I've learned, experiences, and just kind of just jump on this kind of bandwagon of putting more good stuff out there, good vibes and everything. And I've
Yeah.
watched you come onto the scene rather quickly, and it's just I I want to talk to more people who are kind of have that same good energy, infectious energy. I had Yashu on about a week ago, but like yourself, Yashu, Dave Lee, Rob Matt. I mean, just everybody just has this good energy, and yeah. So that's really the impetus behind this. I just want to talk to you. Seem like someone that we could vibe a little bit and get to know you and talk Tesla and talk life.
Hell yeah, man. That sounds great. I would love to. Yeah, that's honestly one of the reasons why I started my channel too, is to like get closer to the folks in that community. I feel like there's a lot of shared experience and people, and especially in the Tesla community, and we're all sort of attracted to this big mission that involves a lot of technical sort of expertise, but it's also very grand and very culturally impactful. It's so unique, and I feel like there's a lot of shared experiences between folks. So I'm super excited to come on and talk to you, man. Seriously, yeah.
Yeah.
I watch some of your stuff. I really like the stuff that you do, and I think the fact that your background is so varied, I think gives you also a unique perspective into why Tesla can be as successful as it is, and other things that you're researching as well. I think having a varied background is one of the most important things people can do. So it's great to hear a little bit about your background, man. It sounds awesome. I think you're probably very lucky to have a stepfather like him to really teach you that stuff that early on. So that's freaking awesome. And now look at you with your sick ass freaking like minimalist background. Fuck, I'm so impressed, dude. It looks so good. Like my
It,
wife is like she like tries to design our house in a specific way. Like your sort of the way you have your background is kind of reminds me a little bit of what we got going on in the house. So I'm pretty impressed, man. Looks
Yeah,
great.
but I can't take credit for any of it. It's my fiance. She it's what she does for a living. So she designs like hotels
Nice.
and museums. Pretty much anytime you ever step into a building, whether it's like an office or a restaurant or anything, and you're like, wow, and it just has an impact on you. That's the work
Yeah.
she does. I mean, it's yeah.
Nice.
So it's nice living with it. So, but sometimes I have an opinion, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's like we can't just do what she wants because I also have the things I think. And it's like, oh, well, I need you to explain that to me. And the
Yeah.
way my mind works is, all right, but explain to me why. What's the why behind it? But okay, what about these
Yeah.
dimensions? How so we're taping things out, and in her mind, she's like, this is so trivial. Why am I having to explain myself? But for me, it's like I have to understand. I need to understand. So
Yeah, yeah.
luckily, she's
Sounds a lot
patient
like
with
my
me.
wife and I. Yeah,
Yeah.
sounds a lot like my wife and I. I've learned. I'm just gonna just do, honey. You do whatever you want. I trust you. You make it happen. And then sometimes I'm like, but why? Why are we doing this here? She's like, I've already explained this a million times to you before. You're gonna end up liking it. I'm like, okay, fine, all right, fine.
Yeah.
And then she's right. So that's great.
No, yeah, I love it. She'll put like a presentation for me. She'll if it's a new space that she's designing for our house, she'll talk about what we're going to put in it, and she'll give calculations about how much space we need for good flow, just like all these things. And like for me, it's like, oh, okay, yeah,
Dang.
that makes sense. Like you just explained it to me. You explained the why behind all of it. Yeah, I can't argue. Like that makes sense. So
That's awesome. Design for
blessing.
engineers. I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah, it's exactly what it is. It's exactly what it is. Yeah. But yeah, so I know your story. All right, I think most people know your story. And if you guys, anyone who watches this, if you guys don't know who is it, Farzad or is it Farzad?
It's
How do you
Farzad. Yeah,
Farzad. Okay.
the first one. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So if you guys don't know his story or who he is, he's ex-Tesla employee, or he left on his own accord, obviously. But former Tesla employee, great story. Go check out his videos. He's talked about a lot, and I don't really want to have you on just to regurgitate your same old story. I'm more kind of curious about you. So what's your background? What's your ethnicity? And you mentioned recently you lived in Spain for a little bit. In case you don't know, I was born in Chile, but my whole family's from Spain. My dad still lives in Oviedo.
Oh
So
snap!
yeah. So when I heard you say that, I was like, oh, this is interesting. I'm like, are you from, like, is your ethnicity from like Morocco area, Algeria? And then that made you want to visit Spain, or is that coincidence, or?
Yeah, yeah. I'll give you the whole story. So my parents, they're both Iranian. So they were both born in Iran. Yeah, and there was a revolution in Iran in 1979, and then they wanted to further their education, so they moved to Spain during that time, and then that's where I was born. So it was them just moving from Iran to Spain, and then living there. I was born in '87. I'm 35 years old now, but I was born in '87. I have a little brother as well who was also born there. But that's how we ended up in Spain. Is my parents moved there during that time frame, and then we were raised in that country. We lived there for about 12 years in Cordoba. That's where
Mm.
we lived, and we had friends that we met in Sevilla, and we would go there quite often. Which is, those that aren't familiar, it's like southern Spain. It's part of this region called Andalusia, which is like the southern region of Spain. And
Yeah.
yeah, I lived there for 12 years, and then right around that time, it was 1999. My dad started to find opportunities. He tried to find an opportunity in the States, in the United States. He had some family here, and I think on one of the last days of his visa or something, he was able to find something. Thankfully, thanks to one of our family members, and that started our journey to the States to pursue the American dream. You know, like everybody likes to say, to pursue the American dream. So we came to the States in '99. I knew 5 words in English, and so I had to basically learn an entire language from scratch once we moved here. And then we lived in Jersey for 3 years, New Jersey for 3 years, in this town called Montclair City, I guess, Montclair, which is it's like half an hour away from New York City. And a few years later, we moved to Pennsylvania, in Bethlehem, where I lived for most of my life. Really, we lived in that area. And then a couple years ago, almost about a year and a half now, my wife and I moved to Austin, Texas, because of the whole, the Gigafactory Texas opening up while I was working at Tesla. They announced it, and then I was able to work with my leadership to relocate here with the intent to be closer to the opening of that factory. But then, as sort of my personal wealth started to grow, and sort of I wanted to pursue different things a little bit. And thankfully, Tesla just was such a rewarding experience. I learned so many things while I was there. I was so lucky to be surrounded by literally the most talented people on earth. I had this opportunity to sort of pursue my own path, and thankfully it worked out. And yeah, now I'm here. Now I'm
Yeah.
here making
No,
YouTube videos,
that's
which
awesome.
was something I did not expect at all. But yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No, neither did I. I started this a little less than a year ago, and it's
Mhm.
my I'll just say her name, Anna. She was up in Boston. She's from Boston. We met in Greece, and we were both leaving Mykonos, and that's where we met. But so she eventually moved down here, but her whole family still lives in Boston. And one weekend she was up in Boston visiting her family. She comes back, and I for a while I had thought about, I want to put something out there about my experience with investing, because I kind of, investing against the grain. I kind of didn't believe in this whole diversification and all that, at least not in the traditional sense. And I've always wanted to kind of get this message out there, because the things that really impacted me were some very heavy investments I made, right? My first investment ever was in Apple. And I went very heavy into Apple because I didn't have enough money to buy anything else, really. I had about $3,000 I saved from working at a pizza restaurant. And then I put it all into Apple before the iPhone came out. And then I made a lot of mistakes along the way. And then I discovered Amazon. And when you get into something like we all are with Tesla, you geek out into it. And I got really into learning about AWS and e-commerce and how things were changing. And I went heavy into Amazon. And now it's the same thing with Tesla. So it was just such a contrarian way to think. And everyone says it's so risky and all that. But what I've learned is if you find something like a Tesla, like anything, and you can really get passionate about it, to the point where you're making models for what you're doing, that's a good investment. And so I just want to give this other perception, because everyone always says, "Oh, S&P 500, just do this and you're good to go." And so anyways, she comes back from Boston one day and she's like, "What'd you do while I was gone?" I look at her, it's like, "I started a YouTube channel." And luckily she's amazing. She just got right on board. She's like, "Okay." And she looked at my branding. She's like, "Oh no, we gotta do this at all." So she's in
Gotta fix it up.
Photoshop, and yeah, she's doing everything. And next thing you know, it's like I look professional. I just need to make my content professional.
Dude,
So
that's so awesome. Your story sounds very similar to sort of how mine is too with Tesla. Because back in so I my first investment in Tesla was in 2012. December 5th, 2012 was the first time I ever bought Tesla stock. And I was in a very similar situation as you. I was, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you went to school or college. I'm assuming you did, but even if you didn't, that's fine. But I had basically $100,000 in debt. I was freaking dead broke, and I finally I was able to find a job that was before Tesla that was super super. I was again super lucky to be surrounded by incredibly good mentors. It was a pet food and supply distributor called Phillips Pet Food and Supplies, which to this day I still talk to folks from that company. Honestly, I learned so many things from that company, and it really prepared me to sort of jump into Tesla when I did. But I remember sitting down and sort of like you, I'm like, okay, so I'm $100,000 in debt. I'm 20 some odd years old, and the company's taking care of me. But I feel like if I really want to become financially independent, I have to figure out how to have outsized gains. Like I can't just put X number of dollars into the S&P or a mutual fund or an index fund and then have it grow 10% year over year. It's going to take freaking forever. Like I'm going to have to wait until I'm 60, 65, and then I'm going to say, oh, I'm retired, whatever that means, right? And so that's when I started my journey of figuring out how to create those outsized gains. And Tesla was really that first lesson for me. It's like, wow, okay. So if you find a company that's going to potentially 10x or 100x or 1000x
yeah,
over the course of 10 years or 20 years, that seems to be a good bet, especially if you're younger and you have the ability to generate income as you grow, right? I think that's one of the things that perhaps the conventional wisdom doesn't really value, is that folks have the ability to generate income well beyond what they think they can, as long as they really put their head towards it and they really work hard to generate income.
yeah,
So in other words, I'm saying like you can make riskier investments if you have the ability to make money and to make more money. Like that's really should be in my, I'm not an economist, I'm not a market expert, but this is how I think about investing. Is that if I'm able to maximize my income, then I can do riskier investments. And that's how I started thinking about it. I'm like, okay,
yeah,
cool. So I shouldn't devalue my ability to generate an income. And so with that mentality, I started finding more risky stuff. And Tesla at that time was considered to be extremely risky, and nobody really believed in it. But then I found this like incredibly tight knit, super intelligent community, which Dave Lee was one of the earliest people that I found that was sort of talking about this. Tesla Motors Club was a
yeah,
forum that it's still around, but it was around back then. And Dave Lee would have these like mega threads where he would, he spent like basically 40, 50 hours a week, I'm sure, just writing these out and researching. And I'm like, oh, wow, like a light bulb went off. I'm like, okay, somebody else kind of gets it. And that's when I started throwing a couple dollars in there, and then that first run up happened. And then I'm like, okay, cool. So it looks like some of those theories are correct. I can really invest if I'm really focused on companies that I really really believe in and they have a very long sort of runway to get to where they need to go, and they seem like they have the right leadership in place to execute that, then why wouldn't you try to go all in, especially if you're younger and you are able to generate a lot of income, and you trust yourself to be able to generate the income to back up or to basically safeguard that risk potentially, right? So say you end up losing all your money. Are you going to go broke, or are you just going to be like, okay, I lost about 6 months of my life, big deal, I'm still 24, 25 years old or whatever, I'm going to continue to build up that wealth and see where else I can put this money, right? So I don't know. I don't know if this is good advice or not, but that was how I approached it, and it's enabled me to, at 35, do what I want to do.
yeah,
And I might be very lucky because of it, and maybe I'm some sort of exception that people shouldn't be following or shouldn't be listening to. And I don't encourage anyone to do what I did, but that's my story. And
yeah,
it's so weird. It feels so weird to be here now and say that's how I got here, but that's how I got here. That's how
yeah.
I got here. It's weird. It's
I
really
guess
strange.
we can put this disclaimer out there now. None of this financial advice. Do your own due diligence
Yes.
on anything. And with that said, allow me to say some things. um, yeah, and that was everything you just said, right? It's you have this like awakening almost. I mean, it's like Plato's allegory of the cave. Like, once you see the light, it's like you can't go back into the cave. It's just this aha moment, and
Yeah.
I think it's almost like this big, not to get a little too Orwellian here, but it's like this conditioning of society that we have where people think the idea of financial independence or retirement, it's an age, it's 67, it's 70.
Hmm.
And the second, like, and this is how I stumbled upon this. Like, the second you sit there on Excel sheet or on a whiteboard and you start doing the math and you realize, okay, let's say I just had $1 million. Now, let's say I could just make 4% on that a year. Can I live off that? And once you start thinking like that, you start realizing, okay, so the target isn't an age. The target is this net amount of money that will just sit there forever, but I can just skim off of it and I live off of that. And that can provide me financial independence. And once you
Right.
realize that, your whole life changes. The way you spend money changes. I mean, I frequently talk about this. I mean, I've had a Model Y built out for a long time, and I keep making reasons in my head why I'm not gonna, hit order. One reason is because I tried to delay it because I wanted to get the front and rear piece castings with the 4680 structural pack. Right, so that's
Hmm.
one reason that I like to lie to myself and say that's why. But the big reason why I keep waiting is because I'm like you. I think Tesla's going to 10x. And so if I buy it, and just for easy numbers, let's say it's $1,000 a month for the auto loan. Well, in my
Hmm.
mind, it's like, okay, well, if I think Tesla's going to 10x, that $1,000, I could easily buy a Tesla share with that. So really, every $1,000 that I pay for that auto loan, that's 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 40. In one year, I'll have paid 120,000. Essentially, in my mind, like the way the math works. So just the idea of how you spend in general just starts changing, right?
Yeah.
Is the juice worth the squeeze? And
Right.
I don't know. It's something that I don't think we talk enough about. Everyone just thinks go to work, come home, live for the weekend, go to work. Instead, it's like,
Yeah.
guys, you should be living for 35, 40. Like that's struggle for that.
Yeah, yeah. I also think too, like, I think there's also, I think financial independence is also closely tied, and you sort of talked about this already, but it's closely tied to your spending habits as well. So, what are the things that make you happy?
Yeah,
Are you a materialistic person or are you not a materialistic person? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those two things. I think folks perhaps don't have the honest discussion with themselves and sit down and really give a lot of thought. It's like, okay, do things make me happy, or do experiences make me happy? Right? And if things make me happy, what are the things that make me happy and how much do they cost? Okay? Like, is it nice cars, nice houses, really good food? I mean, food, I guess, is also an experience, but you can, you have to really sit down and really ask yourself, what are the things that truly make me happy? And I can sort of talk about what one of the light bulbs that went out for me is that there was a period of my life. This was, I had a small business while I was at Tesla. I was working at Tesla. We had some investments. I've been very fortunate to be able to spend money on things that I thought I really wanted, or things that I thought I would really love. We had the nice cars, we had the nice extravagant trips, we had all these, like, really nice fashion items and stuff. We were able to spend the money on things that society would deem as, oh my god, look at the status, look at how nice this is. But then for me, I think the journey that I went through, that I think folks sometimes don't get the chance to, and this is where I think this is sort of a valuable thing if people are able to do this, is like really experiment to try and figure out what are the things that actually matter to you hardcore. Like, what are the things that you actually connect with? And then once you discover that, really start thinking about, okay, how can I put myself in a situation where I can give myself the freedom and the time to be able to enjoy those things as often as humanly possible. And what my gut tells me is that this is probably not going to work for everyone, but I think this might work for a lot of people, say 80% of folks, is that I think you'll soon start to realize is that you need a lot less money than you think to
yeah,
be truly, truly happy. And so your threshold of financial independence should really be driven by how much money do I need to spend every single year to be happy, you know? And if again, if that means nice cars, nice houses, that number goes up. If that means staying at home and creating art and creating YouTube videos and going on a trip once in a while and be able to enjoy like culture very closely and not needing those extravagant things, that number comes down dramatically. right? So I think that's where people, when people ask, sometimes in my comment section, and I'm not an investment channel, I'm just somebody who was able to achieve some financial independence at an early-ish age. But I always get the question of like, how much Tesla stock do you have? How much money should I have to retire, right? And I think that's the conditioning of society that has told people you need X number of shares to retire. But like each person is so different.
Yeah.
It really goes down to the fundamental question of what truly makes you happy. What actually makes you happy as a human being? And that is really the first question, in my opinion, that people have to ask themselves if they want to achieve financial independence. And if you're somebody that's able to get sort of that materialistic experience as early on as you can, then theoretically you might end up in a place where you realize you don't need those things again, and then you end up doing you need less money than you originally thought. And this is counterintuitive advice. I'm almost telling people like go buy expensive shit. So I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I can
No,
curse.
you're fine. You're fine.
My apology. I get passionate about this because it's
No,
like,
that's what we're all
you
about
know
here, man.
yeah, it's counterintuitive advice, but I would almost tell people, especially if you're younger, especially if you have the ability to generate an income and you're confident in your ability to generate the income, don't feel bad to buy the things that seem expensive or society say you shouldn't buy it, and then see if it rings hollow. Because if it rings hollow, then the rest of your life, that thing rings hollow. You're not really pursuing those expensive things anymore.
Yeah.
You're going to pursue perhaps experiences that are going to be way more fulfilling than those expensive things. I don't know. I've spent so much time thinking about this and like becoming like quitting Tesla and really having time to sit down and analyze these things have really opened it really has opened sort of this part of my brain that says like the experience of being a human is so complex, and I don't think we're asking the right questions when it comes to actually achieving financial independence as a whole. There is a subset of people that have sort of figured it out in a way, but like why shouldn't this be common knowledge for everybody? I don't know. And it's and I think it's hard to teach as well, right? And it's very counter, and people are almost afraid to say the things that might actually be correct in solving those problems. But I'm rambling now, so.
No, I love it, man. I mean, this was this is the impetus for my channel, is exactly what you're saying about talking about these things. And
Yeah.
so much of what you said, I mean, this is why I'm happy that I reached out to you, because same wavelength. I can tell. So much of what you just said is things I try to preach on my channel. I cover Tesla, pretty much every video I do, but I don't consider myself a Tesla channel. I happen to be invested in Tesla. I'm all in Tesla outside real estate. So
Yeah.
my stream of consciousness, the things I talk about are Tesla. And the point of my channel is like, these are the things that you should look at and how detailed, methodical you should be when you invest in something. Otherwise, you're not really investing, in my perspective. But the bigger point of my channel is what you're saying. Talking about financial independence. What's it mean to be financially independent? What you were saying before, if you don't have a budget, if you don't know where your money is going, I mean, that's step one. You got to figure that out, right? Because that's the quickest way to get a pay raise or anything, is figure out where your money's going, and then you can cut back on that. As far as what you're saying about, experiences and spending and things of that nature, I think it's been about almost a decade now. I've told everybody in my family, all my friends, my fiance, I tell all of them, do not ever buy me anything that isn't either a consumable or an experience. Otherwise, I don't want it. And the beauty of this goes right to what you're saying. An experience, if everybody could just take a second and think about how many days in their lives can they actually remember. Maybe you remember your prom. Maybe you remember your wedding. Maybe you remember that concert you went to. Maybe you remember that comedy show you went to. But there's so many days we've lived that we can't really remember. So if I can give you an experience that you remember, and that's a day in your life you're going to remember, I think there's something beautiful about that. And then as far as the consumables, with the in-laws, they send us every time for like the holidays or whatnot, they'll send us a gift card to a restaurant, $100 to our favorite Mexican restaurant here. And every time we go there, right? I mean, with the $100, we can go there 2 or 3 times. Every time we go there, I take a picture, I send it to them. And every single time it's, like, hey, thank you. Hey, thank you.
Yeah.
Like, you provided us not food, but a good time and all that. And this was the gift you gave. And it's something, again, it's an experience, and I can give back to them saying a real thank you by, hey, look what we're doing. Here's us out, just thinking about you as we, appreciate your gift. And to me, when you start thinking in those ways, it becomes less about material things. Still, we all need material things. We all want material things, but a lot of times we see a lot of clutter and overconsumption of things, and then next you know, your space, your environment doesn't look the way maybe you want it to look, right? Because
Yeah.
we're trying to overcompensate by buying this or buying that or this piece of clothing or that piece of clothing. When I think a lot of times having, to your point, experiences and more intentionality would bring you a lot more joy. But yeah, beautifully said. Absolutely beautifully
Yeah,
said.
no, I appreciate that. But I do think there's still something to be said for like, I think it's hard, in my opinion, I think it's sometimes hard to wrap your head around how valuable experiences are until you get that fix of materialism. You know, I think sometimes you do have to realize, sometimes you do have to get that stupid, sometimes you have to buy a Model S.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to buy a pair of $2,000 shoes, you know, just so you can really experience what it means to have something that you thought you really really
Mhm.
wanted, and then after a few weeks or months you're like, okay, so maybe I didn't get that dopamine hit, I didn't get that sort of like thing that really made me feel alive. It
Yeah.
dissipates. Whereas, maybe you spend, I don't know, 2 weeks backpacking through Ireland or Switzerland or something, and you spend, I don't know, $2,000. Maybe you do it super cheap and you're just walking around talking to locals, and maybe that is something that becomes much more attractive, I think I'm still for people trying those out, and what you say is 100% true. But it's also like, how do we get people? How can people get to that mentality? And I think sometimes you have to go through that materialistic phase to understand that maybe you're not a materialistic person. And I
Yeah.
truly believe most people are not really that materialistic. It's just that we are brought up in a society where materialistic things have a lot of value. There's a perception that there's a lot of value in these materialistic things. And like Tesla cars are a perfect example of that. Now they're becoming a very like thing that everybody wants. Ooh, I have to have a Tesla. I have to have a Model 3, But that sort of falls in the same category. Maybe the Model 3 is not so much the thing you're looking for. Maybe you're looking for something that you really believe in and you feel proud in having, right? So that's sort of the experience side of it. So, yeah, I mean, what,
Yeah.
what you say is, I'm glad that your channel exists, because I think that's the sort of discussion that is not common, and it's counter and is not well understood because it's complex, right? These
Yeah.
things are not easy to like dissect and talk about. There's a lot of complexity to it because humans are involved and humans are complex beings. So yeah.
Yeah. So you're obviously financially independent. I'm not laying out any secrets. You said a second ago. I'm with you. I don't think it's important to talk about how much net worth does a given individual have. I personally don't disclose that. I talk about on my channel all the time. I'm financially independent, but I still work because I do love what I do, and I have a
Mm,
great team, and it's just it's more than work for me. But at the same time, I think about what would it look like if I left? I think about it a lot, right? How would I choose to take an income for myself? And I was hoping, without getting too much into specifics, I'm curious, and if this is a topic you don't touch on, it's fine. But how do you go about choosing to, I guess, pay yourself? Do you go by selling shares? Do you like Chicken Genius? He would sell a put and take the premium from that and live off that. What's your method in order to have revenue? Do you do it once a year and then that's what you live off and you don't care about fluctuations, or do you do it monthly? I mean, what's your
yeah.
strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question. So mine is mostly just passive income. So we have real estate that
Okay.
that gives us passive income essentially. And then if like say we have, like this year we're taking a few trips. We took some local trips domestically. We went to Arizona, we went to Florida. Then in about a month we're going to go to Ireland. Then the month after that we're going to go to Cancun, and I think we're doing something after that, right? And so if we feel like there is some sort of like extra expense that is occurring where the passive income can't cover it, as an example, then I might look to sell like a small percentage of my shares, single digit or even fractional percentage of our shares.
Yeah.
Now with this YouTube channel, this is sort of like one of the missions that I had when I left Tesla was like, if I really pursue my passion and I really do it very, very honestly, I have confidence that in some way it's going to generate some sort of passive income. And I'm not doing my YouTube channel for the money, but that's also generating some sort of passive income. So like a percentage of that is going into my, building out the studio and building out the channel and making as much good decisions as I can make for the content, putting that money back into, basically reinvesting the money into the channel. But that's also a percentage of that's also going to, buying food, taking trips, and my wife and I going out to dinner, or, maybe working on some stuff for the house, right?
Yeah.
So really, it's majority of the percentage is going to be passive income from those real estate investments. And as if the YouTube channel grows, then a percentage of that will also go into that. And then for any expenses that say where we deem that it's worth selling a small percentage of shares to cover, then we do that. But really, the goal here is, I think, longer term, what I would really like to get to is that, passive income is more than enough to cover absolutely everything we need. And then the Tesla shares just sit there forever, and we're probably close already to that point. And when I left the company, I had that in mind. Like say I don't have any passive income, we'll still be able to do this probably for the rest of our lives, and we're going to be very lucky. I don't know how much is going to be left at the end, but we're definitely going to have plenty to live the lives how we want. But really, the longer term goal, is to utilize the passive income and the assets that we have to build something that's valuable for society, whatever that is. And if that right now for me is creating a YouTube channel to try and pass on the knowledge and what I've learned, and just make that available for everybody, and then I get a little bit on the side through ad revenue or whatever, then so be it. But at least I have the time now to figure out what are the bigger things that I want to work on. Whereas, when I worked for Tesla, even if I'm not directly doing emails and I'm directly working on the company, like say, for 50, 60 hours a week when I left of direct work, when I'm not working directly, that passive time where I'm just like lounging or whatever, this thing's still going. This
Yep.
thing's still like, what should I work on now? Like, what are the next things I need to work on? Is the leadership structure built correctly? We're working on the right things. Who should I reach out to next? What's the next problem that's going to come up? And you start thinking, oh my God, what's the email that's going to appear in my inbox tomorrow morning? How should I plan for that? And then you go and check your email, right? So you're never really disconnected. You don't have time to sit down and actually analyze what are the things that you should be working on for yourself that really fulfills your inner passion, and disconnecting and essentially leaving that company and giving yourself the time to sit down and truly give yourself the time to sit down and analyze what that thing is that you really want to pursue is incredibly important. And sometimes it takes long, I'm still in that discovery phase, but this YouTube channel, I think, has given me a lot of context into what I think my next steps are. And I think imparting knowledge and passing on what I've learned seems to be something that is valuable and people are really enjoying. And so I'm trying to figure out, okay, what are things that I can do that's going to maximize that so that it's maximally available to everybody. And if there is a path to generate a passive income through that doesn't disrupt my ability to reach as many people as humanly possible, and where everyone feels that it's super, super valuable, then that's probably going to become the goal at some point. But it's also important to have fun, right?
Yeah.
I didn't quit Tesla just to, again, be super obsessed with something again and not have time to actually live my life the way I want to live my life, right? So now I got to be careful. And so I'm learning things about myself, like I'm an obsessive person in a way. I can't disconnect. I have a problem disconnecting. So I'm trying to work on that as well. So super long answer to your
No,
question, but I just wanted to
yeah.
give you some context. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think not just people who cover Tesla, but in general, I think people who think in this certain way, sometimes people say it's like an engineering way of thinking it, but I've learned it's not just engineers who think this way. There's a lot of people who get kind of obsessive about things. And I think obsessive almost has a negative connotation, but I think it's just people get very passionate, interested, and want to go deeper and deeper into certain things. And when they don't know something, it's just, I don't know, it's that your imagination working at its most optimal levels, because, there's a reason we have curiosity as humans. So I don't know, I love it. And it's nice seeing other people who have the same kind of the drive and the curiosity. And, your channel is definitely gonna do well. I mean, if for no other reason, just the good energy you provide. So
I appreciate that, man. Likewise to
nice.
you, man. I really enjoy your content too. I think you're doing really good things. And I just like you as a person, dude. You're just super easy to talk to, and you have a great background.
Yeah,
It's
it's
great.
funny. I don't know if you probably can't see it, but these are all just Time magazine covers.
Yeah.
The one over here you probably can't see. It's Nikola Tesla.
Mhm.
When I was
Okay.
so I became obsessed with him when I was young. Third grade, I had to do a science experiment, and my dad's an engineer, and the one who lives in Oviedo. And he he never believed in just doing a volcano or any kind of basic kind of science experiment. So we went to
Mm-hmm.
Barnes and Noble, and he bought a book, red cover, this thick. I still have it. It's all highlighted all throughout it. This thick about who Nikola Tesla was.
Oh
And
man.
yeah, and I had to read it when I was in third grade. I mean, as an adult, that's a daunting book
Wow.
to read. But as a third grader, it was daunting. And when I was a third grade, I didn't get through all of it. But I got through enough where I decided for my science experiment to build a Tesla coil. And so that's what I did. But that book just ruined me because I would get in arguments with teachers about who actually invented the light bulb and how electricity could be free and wireless. And yeah, it
You're like,
wasn't
I have the
great.
truth. I have the
Yeah,
truth.
well, no, it almost created complex because I started wondering, am I wrong? Am I lying? But this book
Mm,
says this, but
mm,
this book says this other thing. So how do I know it's real? And I mean, who
mm.
knows what that did to me? It's probably ruined me in some ways I'm not even aware of.
I
Understanding
mean, I
books can
think
say
I think
different
what it
things.
did is, yeah, I think what it did, it probably gave you the curiosity to pursue the truth, in some way. And
Yeah,
maybe perhaps that's why you are where you are, is that
yeah,
sort of having that conflict. I always think about, like, conflict is one of the best things. When people say, whatever doesn't kill you make you stronger, or you have to go through fire to, a phoenix rises from the ashes. There's so many
yep,
different ways to
yeah.
describe this, right?
All the
But I
idioms.
think exactly. But there is something to be said about experiencing conflict and then realizing how, like, maybe like years in the future, you look back to that moment, you're like, holy crap, like if that never happened, I would have never been who I am today.
Hmm.
Perhaps that's something like that. I mean, I just barely met you, but if
Yeah,
you're a curious person, it seems like that would have been a good experience to have. You know.
yeah. Um, so yeah, but anyway, so that's why I have these. And next one is Steve
Hmm.
Jobs because my first investment, and then Elon because I mean I've been geeking out Elon forever. I was actually offered a job at SpaceX in Hawthorne, but I couldn't take it at the time. It just wasn't the right situation for me. I wanted
Yeah.
to work for SpaceX out of Cape Canaveral, but the position
Mhm.
they wanted me for as a hydraulics engineer was in Hawthorne. I'm like, oh, which is funny because now the position I want is available in the Space Coast over in Cape Canaveral. It's like, oh, come on, like, but it's all right. Everything worked out for the best. So
Yeah.
so no hard feelings there. But yeah, so so Elon's obviously up there for many reasons. But speaking of Elon, a couple things actually. Actually, what? Before we get into Elon, because that's probably predictable that we're going to talk about Elon and Tesla. You recently posted a video about or a tweet regarding this very impactful video by the one and only Lex Friedman about
Hmm.
a goose running around. So I know that you watch Lex Friedman. So I know you watch Lex
Okay.
Friedman. Did you did you happen to catch the interview with Grimes?
Man, you're like the fifth person who's asked me this in like the last like 24 hours. I haven't yet. I only saw a couple excerpts. I saw the clip he had where they discuss motherhood was one,
Hmm.
and then the other one, oh man, I'm blanking on this right now. But I haven't watched the full interview yet. But I know a lot of people seem to be, like, somebody DM me I think this morning and said, like, hey, like, you should really watch this because it kind of gives you like an insight into, in a passive way, into Elon, but it's also like it really highlights how brilliant of a thinker Grimes is, and almost like why they're like sort of they came together in the way that they did. So, but I haven't yet. But I've heard great
I
things. I've heard great things
I
about it.
Yeah, my best friend Greg, he's an intellectual property attorney. He lives right over here. I literally bombarded him with Lex's video saying, you got to watch this. You have to watch this. My fiance, I told her, I probably told her like 3 times, you have to watch it. They both finally watched it, and their minds were just like blown. It's
Okay.
so well done. I mean, everything Lex Friedman does is beautiful. Again, another person, just that good energy, just about love and peace, and just good open discourse. But
Yeah.
he did it so beautifully because the only time Elon was ever brought up was once at the very end. So I love that it wasn't just, hey, Grimes, tell us about Elon, or what's Elon like? Or it was, Grimes, tell us about Grimes. And
Yeah.
just listening to how she thinks. And, I don't want to say that Elon, has rubbed off on her. I like to think these are just her thoughts because a lot of things she says, again, I'm long-winded on this, but I thought you would actually really enjoy it because some of the stuff she was saying about music was absolutely just, it felt like my mind was blowing up. And I didn't even think about. And one of the things, I literally made a notes with lists of things that she said that just kept rocking me. It's like, wow, that's heavy. But one of the things she was saying was that the reason music is targeted to younger generations is because their minds are still very plastic. And as you
Mm,
get older, your mind becomes less plastic, right? It becomes
mhm,
more hardened in its ways, which we all know that. But she was
mm,
talking about how she forces herself to listen to new music to keep that
mm.
plasticity within her mind, and how music's like one of the only ways we can actually do that. And my fiance brought up a good point. Like fashion is kind of the same way, but and I'm butchering the way she speaks about this because she speaks about it very eloquently. But it's just, man, like that's something I never even thought about how
Mm.
as we get older, right, we get stuck in a certain genre of music or in a genre
Mm.
of clothing. It's our minds kind of just hardening almost. But yeah, I don't know. It was just I highly recommend it to everybody to check out that podcast with Lex and Grimes.
I'll have to check it out. So I'm gonna go for a run whenever we're done with this interview. By the way, you have me for as long as you want. FYI, I don't have a cap, so just don't be afraid to take this for as long as you want.
Appreciate
I'm
that.
probably gonna throw it on. Of course, I'm gonna throw it on my run. I started
Okay.
running again, so I'm like that's one of the things I'm gonna throw on. So I'll definitely throw it on my run and I'll listen to it. But what's that comment you made is so interesting because um, music has been a very big part of my life. Big part of my life. So I've been playing guitar for a little over 20 years now. I've been playing the clarinet. I mean, I don't really play it
Oh.
anymore, but I was like semi-pro. You know, I would play in like pit orchestras and stuff, and I was in marching band and orchestra, and I would play in like theater plays and stuff. I can play the piano, I can play bass guitar, I can play the sax, I can play the drums a little bit. I music has been a very large part of my life. And I'm not like this amazing musician, but I really connect to music. And one of the things that I've always found very interesting is a lot of people, I feel like, to what you said, are like, for example, they listen to country and that's it. They listen to pop and that's it, I love death metal. I love jazz. I love blues. I love pop. I love rock. I love hip hop. I love trap. I love EDM. Like, there's so many different genres of music that I love. I'm starting to get into country. Like, that was one that I was always like, no, hell no, country, worst genre ever. Just because I'm stupid. But now that I live in Texas, everyone listens to country, and then I'm like, a couple of songs I hear, it's not the mainstream country that I like so much. It's like the raw country, like the actual, like where people are telling stories,
Yep.
because country is like a very storytelling sort of
It
genre,
is. Yep.
in its own way. But like, what's one of the comments I remember somebody telling me, because death metal is like my favorite genre, like Opeth and sort of that,
Mm-hmm.
almost like progressive death metal is sort of my genre, and that's a genre that's like super, like almost no one listens to it because it's so raw and heavy and deep. But I feel like there's something very unique about that genre, because I find that the hardest ones to listen to usually are the ones that are the deepest. That's what I've sort of found about this, because there's got to be a reason why it sounds the way it sounds. And just to got to get back to my original point of why I brought this up, is that I really connect with what Grimes is saying there, because I 100% agree with her. Is that having a wide palette of music and really exposing yourself to new genres constantly, I totally I don't know how I can prove this, but I think that's 100% correct. And I think
Yep.
having a malleable brain is incredibly important to building a society. Because if people are very set in their ways, and they're very strict about how they think, you're not going to be able to advance society forward, because everyone's just be like, well, it's always been good this way. Why change, right? You have that sort of like old school medieval, before even before then, where people are just okay with things, with the way that things are for 100 years, and then no one is really brave enough or wants to feel challenged enough to change the way they think, right? And I feel like the reason why society moves forward is because there's sort of a threshold of a percentage of the population that has a malleable brain that says, okay, let's move everybody forward. And then the remaining 40-60% of the population is like, okay, fine, we'll come along. But they're like struggling, but they're at least coming along, right? The larger percentage of people that have a malleable brain, I think the faster we'll advance as a civilization. And if music has a role to play to make that happen, I think that's a great thing. But yeah, I
Yep.
have to watch that freaking interview. I have to watch it.
Yeah, it's
I really
excellent.
have to watch it.
It's
Yeah.
weird to me when people say they don't like a certain genre of music. I mean, like when you said that you used to not like country, I mean, I would have asked like, you tell me you don't like Chris Stapleton? Like, are you kidding me? That
I
man's
maybe
just,
heard one song.
masterful. Or someone's like, oh, I don't like classical music. It's like, have you ever
Yeah.
watched a Harry Potter movie and not thought the music was amazing? Like
Lord of the Rings, bro.
Lord of the Rings.
Woo! Oh my
Yeah,
god.
I mean, it's just you could go on and
Dude,
on.
can I
Like,
tell you something super nerdy? I want to tell you something incredibly
please
nerdy.
bring it
My
on.
wife and I would go on like hikes around here, and then I would pull out my phone and I would play the Lord of the Rings soundtrack, and we would pretend we're like hobbits, like walking through the Shire.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing.
Dude. And I think my brother was there too. Like we were just walking around, and it just felt so magic. It's the dumbest thing ever, but it was so fun,
Uh,
dude. Just something
uh,
about having the Lord of the Rings theme song playing while you're hiking is like it brings a whole different level. And then when people would cross our thing, I'm like, okay, quick, pause it, pause it. I don't want to look like a
yeah.
freaking nerd in front of these people.
Oh, that's amazing.
Oh my god. Sorry, that's the
No,
first thing that
hey,
came to mind. Yeah.
that's how you guys all know this is not staged. It's all stream of consciousness right here. This is all real.
Oh my god.
Oh, that's
Uh,
amazing. Yeah, cool. So, on that note,
we're
here's
so
a weird
nerdy.
transition back to Tesla. Yeah, all right. I know everybody wants to hear us talk about Tesla, so I figured might as well
Sure.
talk a little bit.
Sure.
And some things I don't hear enough people talk about, and I guess there's not a lot of former Tesla employees that really get to talk about Tesla, but maybe not even as a Tesla employee, but in general, why do you think there's so much hate or animosity towards Elon or the misinterpretation? I mean, it's wild to me. I mean, I don't really want to talk too much about Twitter, but the Twitter thing, for example,
Yeah.
Elon very clearly said you have to, follow the rules of the country. Like and everybody's saying you can't have all free speech. You can't yell fire in a building. It's like, are you like, you're blatantly choosing to ignore certain things he's saying,
Right.
right? Or the president won't acknowledge that, we sent an entire crew of all civilians to space and it came back down successfully. No acknowledgement. I mean, I don't understand. Like this is sometimes I think we must be in a simulation. How can it be any other country, any other place in the world would die to have someone like that who's just trying to do good for the world? Right? There's no real political ideology. He says people on the left are going to hate what I do with Twitter. People on the right are going to hate what I do with Twitter.
Yeah.
But the idea is to do the most good. And I don't understand the hate. And I mean, maybe from your perspective, what you see living in Bethlehem to Austin, and maybe also internally, like what's the feeling internally with people? Like, are they annoyed by this? Are they lost, or do they kind of get it sometimes?
You mean within the context of like the people that hate Tesla or
Yeah, I
or
mean, I guess sometimes people can say, yeah, well, he made this joke, and maybe that joke wasn't so funny.
oh, I see.
But even
Yeah.
that, it's like, okay, you don't like his humor, but the things he's doing, like,
Yeah. So I think a lot of it is, this is my opinion. I think a lot of it is that there is a significant percentage of the population that just doesn't have time, right? And so what I mean by that is that percentage of the population is plugged into some sort of power structure or media structure or a group of people that they follow that where they deliver essentially what they want those people to think and hear or what those people should be following, and that subset of the power structure or whatever you want to call it is feeding the cons or the negatives, the perceived negatives of an Elon Musk or a Tesla. And then these people don't have time, right or wrong, they don't have time to actually sit down and look at the opposite side of what's going on. And then whatever time they use to learn about Elon or Tesla or whatever, they do it within the bubble that they're plugged into, right? And so I think you think about what is the percentage of people in, say, the United States that are working multiple jobs, right? They're working, 40, 50 hours a week on their job. And then they come home to 4 kids and a wife. And maybe they have a lot of stuff going on. And then they have a specific news site or whatever that they follow. And this is what they tell them, or a specific person, and this is what they tell them. And then that's what they take. and then perhaps they think about certain things a certain way, and perhaps the person's very they're very convincing in how they're conveying the message, and they trust that person. They're like, okay, cool. So that's what I think of Elon, right? So I don't think when those people are talking about Elon or Tesla in that way, it's not the I think a majority of those people just haven't had the time to sit down and critically think about what's going on. So it's just they're just passing on information from this group of people that want those group of people to think that way. So really the fault here is that there is a subset of news places or people that drive narratives or politicians that have something to gain by making these people think that way about Elon and Tesla, and they're using that to their advantage. Okay, so that's kind of how I think about this. As far as like, yeah, so I guess that's how I think about it. And I
Yeah.
don't know if that's like too, it's maybe too convoluted or it doesn't make a lot of sense. But
No.
I think it comes down people don't have enough time to actually do the due diligence, and they're just plugged into a thing that tells them this is why Elon and Tesla is bad.
Yeah, no,
You know?
I think that makes sense for some people. I mean, I have a really close friend. He's from Brazil, and
Yeah.
he's huge into Bitcoin. Huge, ultimate entrepreneur individual. Has 5 companies that just he's just a rock star of individual. But he had this
Hmm.
perception of Elon Musk, especially whenever the whole renewable energy, Bitcoin mining, right? Elon, all that stuff happened, and
Yeah.
he had just this horrible thought about Elon for a little bit, and he was under the impression Elon sold all or Tesla sold all of their Bitcoin and just all this like all these things. I was like, where are you hearing this from? And I had to show him. I was like, no, look, man, this is what's actually happened, literally from the horse's mouth. Which you
Yeah.
can't say that about most CEOs, right? Like this is
Yeah.
literally them saying
Look at the
what they
balance
did,
sheet.
why they. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But and now over time, now this individual is posting on Instagram tweets of Elon. It's like he's like seeing the truth about all this, which it's funny because being such a Bitcoin enthusiast as he is, he's not very plugged into mainstream media or things of that nature, right? He's a very individual thinker, but it's almost like
Yeah.
even if we're within our own echo chambers, we can be manipulated by that. So that's why
Yeah.
I'm always so cautious to think, okay, yes, I think all these things about Tesla, but where could it go wrong, right? What
Sure.
am I not thinking about? Okay, what if Tesla is nothing more than a car company, right? Well, then what? But yeah, anyways, I'm going on a tangent here.
No, you're
But
fine.
what are your thoughts with regards? I mean, same kind of thing though. I mean, maybe further up the chain, like an Elizabeth Warren, intentionally saying
Mm.
Elon paid no taxes in 2018 when it's public knowledge. 2017 he overpaid, hence no taxes in 2018. Like
Yep.
just the disingenuous nature of that. I mean, I used to have respect for Elizabeth Warren, but then you see some of these things. It's like, what is happening here? Like,
Yeah.
why? Why? How can you just blatantly say these things and nobody calls you out? Or I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
something I'm very touchy about.
No, I get it, man. I feel the same exact way. I think they're playing by an old set of rules that has taught them that if you take a certain position on a on a thing that's happening in culture, it's going to get you X amount of votes. And they have teams of people that sit down and apparently they've done the math, and they think that if Elizabeth Warren comes out with this narrative, she's going to gain X percentage of voters from this block and this block and this block, which is going to allow her to remain in power or win power in the next election or whatever, right? So it's all just a game. It's
Yeah.
all a freaking game that these people are playing. The one of the things that I've learned through my journey with Tesla and Elon and following all these things, which I think a lot of people have also learned, but I don't think it's talked about too much, is that if you really and spend the time like you and I have and become almost obsessed, but like let's just say let's call ourselves learned. We've become very learned and knowledgeable on Elon and Tesla in these things, right? And then you start seeing how mass media and different outlets just outright a lie, or they misconstrued, or they push a certain narrative that is just plainly either false or is very obviously trying to achieve an outcome to try and hurt that company or people. You start to realize just how many people don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing that I think I learned from this journey. And there's a lot of those people in again media outlets or power structures that are on purpose driving a narrative that is counter to what is actually happening for the purpose of something. And usually those things are monetary in value, right? And so and so my trust for these things, I used to, dude, when I was younger, I used to throw on CNN because I was told that CNN is the place you go to get your news, right?
Yeah.
This is, you want to go here to be informed. And
The
so I became a
unbiased
news
one, right?
junkie. Exactly, the unbiased.
Yep.
No, Fox News is too
Yeah.
right and MSNBC is too left. CNN is perfect,
Mm.
and then you have people with that Fox household and an MSNBC household, right? But then this Tesla thing is like, I'm like, wow, like this is kind of insane. Like I can't believe just how misinformed these people are, right? So that was a very eye-opening experience for me. So now the thing that has eroded in me quite a bit because of me following Tesla and all is like it's trust. It's trust. I don't trust things the way I used to trust anymore. And maybe this is just me getting older and wiser.
No.
Maybe
Well,
this is the whole adage of Sorry, go ahead.
I don't think it's
Yeah,
it's an age thing. I
yeah,
think it's to your point. And yeah, we can be called fanboys or Tesla obsessed or whatever, but I mean, you don't call a doctor obsessed because they learn their craft really well, right? You don't call a basketball or NFL player obsessed because they spend time to know what they're doing. So
I want an obsessed doctor working on me. I'll tell you that right now.
yeah, 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 exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so eye opening. Once you know what you're talking about, and you hear what people sit there and say, and it's like, this is wrong. This is incorrect. Everything they're saying is just,
Yeah.
you're right. It creates a lot of distrust. And, CNBC, I always have CNBC on, and it's amazing to see the amount of incorrect things that they say and the amount of flip-flopping. And thankfully, there's some good people that go on there that, like a Gene Munster, and sometimes I've seen Rob Maurer on there. Even Ghali's been on there. And, they try to, set the record straight. So credit to CNBC for bringing those people on. But yeah, it definitely erodes trust in that system. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think there's also something to be said too, is that to get the right information out there, it takes a lot of time and effort,
Yeah,
and
yes, it
sometimes a
does.
lot of these, it does, and a lot of these media companies or whatever you want to call them, like these people that pass information on to the public, they're just looking to, again, it's the whole clickbait thing, right? Like, what is the thing that I can do to spend the least amount of time to generate the largest amount of revenue so that I can keep my job?
Yeah,
That's the equation.
it's
That is the
it's
equation, and that's how a lot of this stuff runs.
so. I was watching you and Tom Nash. Great. I think it was your episode 2 with him. That was a great one.
Thank you.
But you guys were talking about something. I forget the context, but it was just about when did this bifurcation of people, the extremists, happen? And I think you guys kind of came to the consensus that was essentially like the financial crisis that happened, and then you had student loan debt, and so it makes it hard for people to believe in capitalism when they're so far behind. And I think that's so well put. But just take a step further. I think you have things that amplify that, right? That bifurcation. To your point, the media, and this need for watch hours and clickbait and things of that nature. And we all know cable TV is dying, right? It's very clear it's dying. And something that I've been thinking for not that long, a couple months. Just I believe in analogies, and I think if you can say something in analogy, it can really hit home with certain things you're trying to convey. And what I've realized is that if you take the way we consume media right now and relate it to books, you have fiction and nonfiction, right? Pretty straightforward. I think we're having the same thing with media now, where I think YouTube is becoming the nonfiction as to books, whereas Hulu, Netflix, Disney Plus, that's the fiction. And I think cable TV is just going away. And that's what I'm starting to see. And YouTube can, float on that line being fiction too. But I see, if I want to learn how to do something, I'm going on YouTube. If I want to understand how something works, I'm going on YouTube. If I want to hear a biography or an interview with someone, I'm going on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
If I want to be entertained by some movie, I'm going on Netflix or Hulu or HBO Max. So I think that is going to be a very healthy thing for us, because maybe that gets us away from this cable TV that's just trying to divide us and sensationalize everything with fear and all that just to get views and clicks. And, it's the rabbit hole goes deep.
I mean, you can really think about. I mean, YouTube in a sense is kind of this way too, unless you have YouTube Red. If you really think about it, and some of the other ones too, or the one that you pay for. I have it, like you don't get ads on YouTube. It's like the best thing ever. But cable, the way it's structured is they want to create things that you want to watch so that they can push you ads. That's literally the entire business model of cable. It's not really like a programming with ads. It's ads with things in the middle so
Yeah.
that you can keep watching so you can watch those ads, right? And YouTube is kind of this way too, in a sense, unless again you have that thing that gets rid of it. So that business model to me, I think to your point is going away, but I think it also says something about I think people now have the ability to access the individual instead of the structure, like
Yeah.
instead of the company. And I think that's why YouTube can be such a great thing, is because when, so say, take a Tom Nash or a Dave Lee or yourself or whatever, meet Kevin, Chicken Genius when he was on. There's so many different folks that people in our sphere sort of follow. These are individuals. They're self-funded. They don't really have any incentives per se, where they have a boss that's asking them to perhaps sway something this way or another. You get a connection to an individual. And then when you are able to connect with an individual, I think that's way more powerful than whatever a media company and a conglomeration of people with different ideas come together and they come out with some bastardized version of a program or some sort of idea that they're trying to float, right? Whereas on YouTube, you have an individual that's trying to drive that. And if you want the fiction thing, like you talked about, great, go to the company, because the company has more resources, Disney Plus or whatever, and these studios that exist. And usually those can come together. You have a lot of creativity. They come together. They create Ozark and Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones and all these other things that people love to watch. And yeah, you make a great point. You make a great point, and I 100% agree with that. That's
Yeah.
definitely, it's going to be super healthy. It's going to be super, super healthy. And I think hopefully my hope is that it really allows the best ideas and the individuals with the best intentions to gain the most trust from the people. And I think that eventually will lead to a more productive society and a one that's more united and more accepting. I hope. I don't know how we
Yeah.
get there, but it just seems like that's the foundation we need.
No, I can agree more. Yeah, no, and I hope we get there. I mean, I say this, well, I don't say this frequently on my channel. I try to be as apolitical as possible. I don't really identify with anyone. I just identify with certain ideas. But
Okay.
when you're gonna sit there and you take like a Joe Rogan, an Elon Musk, a Richard Brand, and you're calling them alt-right or Nazi-like, it's like, all right, something's wrong here. I mean, Branson, I mean, come on. Or Richard Branson, I mean, wow. Russell Brand. Wow, I'm mixing
Yeah,
up
yeah,
names here. Sorry, but
yeah.
that's how preposterous it is. It's just crazy here,
Yeah,
these things.
it's crazy.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to just labeling. Labeling is the old way of dividing, of creating your group to get the things that you want to get done.
yeah,
And it's falling apart. It's
yeah,
clear. It's falling apart. And the more it falls apart, the more desperate those forces are going to get to retain whatever they have. Because if it goes away, they go away, and humans don't like going away. So
yeah,
they're going to try very hard, and it's going to get way louder before it dies out.
yeah.
And I think that's what we're going through right now.
I think we're going through that right now, exactly. Okay, so let's shift into more fun topics. Let's talk about
Sure.
Tesla stock. And actually, on this moment, I'll share my screen real quick.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let's see.
See a big old black screen.
Let me try this again.
No problem.
Told you I'm learning. It's a new platform.
It's all
Or new-
good.
Let's see.
all
What did I
good.
do wrong here? There we go.
There we go. I see it.
All right. Yeah. So Tesla is moving right now.
Oh,
So
what are we at?
yeah, we're at 918.
Oh,
So
sweet.
yeah, we're having a nice little run.
Wait, did the Fed make an announcement yet, or is that
No,
a,
we got
in an
we got
hour?
another hour or
Okay.
55 minutes. Yeah. Yeah. So with that said, do you have any thoughts on that, on the Fed, what we're doing with inflation? I have some thoughts, but I'd be curious to hear what you think.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on this by any means, but I think
I don't think any of them are either.
I agree. I don't think anyone knows what the hell they're doing. This is
No,
like
I
a
don't
perfect
think.
example. This is like a perfect example of this is one of my biggest findings in life, is that no one really knows what they're doing. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm just doing what feels good. I don't I think the folks in the Fed and everywhere else, I think if anybody says that they're an expert in something, or anybody says and comes out and they tell you like, hey, I know everything about this thing, you should trust me, that is the first person I don't trust. because I'm
Yeah.
like, there's no way you know everything about everything. If you're not honest about not really knowing what you're doing, you're not anyway. But the Fed,
Yeah,
um,
but before you go into
yeah,
that, yeah, so I interview. I mean, especially right now, I'm interviewing a whole bunch of candidates for engineering roles, and
mm,
the big test I always give, and the hallmark for anyone out there, if you ever interview for an engineering job, I'm telling you right now, the hallmark of a good engineer is an engineer who says, "I don't know" when they don't know. What I
yes,
tend to do is I will ask them a question about something that they're familiar in. If it's networking, if it's compute, if it's containerization, whatever, and I'll drill deeper and deeper and deeper. Obviously, something that I know, and I'm trying to get you to a point where you say, "That's a good question. I don't know, but I'll find out." And if you can say that, okay, this person is not here trying to BS me. They're actually willing to learn and be open because
yeah,
we don't all know everything. And if you don't have that humility to say you don't know, oh man, I can't teach that, right? I can't.
so true.
Yeah, but sorry, go
So
on.
no, you're good, dude. 100, dude. I've interviewed freaking hundreds of people in my career, probably thousands at this point. But I that is the exact thing I look for. I look for a humble nature and somebody who seems to have some natural talent. The
Mhm.
people like I've ended so many interviews early where I'm like, hey, like basically the question goes along the ways of, hey, what do you think you can learn more about this, or how would you rank yourself from an expert level from zero, like 1 to 10? And if they're like, yeah, I don't have anything else to learn, I'm perfect for this thing. I'm like, okay, thank you so very much for coming, and I throw out the freaking resume because that's like you have to leave yourself some room to actually say, hey, maybe I don't know everything, and there's things that I can expand on. But anyway, sorry, we
Yeah.
can go on this for another
Yeah, yeah,
hour
yeah, I
on
know.
the topic, but I know you want to get to the thing. So
Yeah, yeah,
go
the
ahead. Sorry.
Fed.
Yeah, the Fed. Yeah, I mean, the thing that I'm really interesting. So within the context of interest rates going up, what, and this is like a super, like, I have no, I talk about, I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to this stuff. I really don't know what I'm doing, so please don't take anything I say seriously, but I'm still going to say what I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, yeah.
I think what's interesting about this is that it seems like a lot of people, if not almost everyone, is expecting some sort of recession to happen at some point. Recession meaning like we're going to get into a situation potentially where people are going to lose their jobs and people are going to have less money than they did now, and so on and so forth. So I think that's very very it's curious because usually when everyone agrees that something's going to happen, usually the opposite happens. And again, this is like sort of like gut feel experience, not based on reality or facts or anything like that. And I think sort of the Fed's decision to do what they need to do is just going to, whatever structures are in place that are going to follow that reaction or that action is just going to basically lend itself to what usually happens, right? So if the interest rate goes up, stock market's probably going to go down, blah blah blah. So outside of that, I don't really know what's going to happen. I still feel like we're sort of in an experimental phase when it comes to um, building an economy. We've printed more cash, more money than we ever have in our history, if I'm not wrong. And now we're like experimenting with this sort of, we've raised and lowered interest rates in the past, but like we've never had this sort of condition. I think the government is at an all-time high in debt and a deficit. So it's like we're in this weird place, but at the same time, we have like an economy that it seems like there's way more openings for jobs than there is labor.
Mhm.
So like there seems to be a ton of demand as well. So I don't know. I don't know. If it goes up 50 basis points or 75 basis points, I don't really have any sort of thoughts about that. I'm more like long term focused. I'm like 5 years from now, what is the economy going to look like, and am I optimistic that that economy is going to be stronger? And I think it is, because we've gone through this sort of 2-year period since COVID, where I think a lot of people have sat down and have really have done a lot of introspection and trying to figure out what their talents are best used for. And I think ultimately that's what's going to drive the economy forward. The Fed can do whatever they want. I think when you have 8 billion people on Earth sort of rethinking what they want to do and become way more efficient in creating value for humanity and society, eventually I think that's what's going to move forward. And the things that are happening short term, I think are inconsequential. But I could be 100% wrong. But that's sort of
Yeah.
how I think about what's going on.
No, I mean, that's, again, I talk about on my channel all the time. I think it's important to understand what's happening today. I think it's
Yeah.
important to understand, James Dalma said it the best, right? In a interview with Dave Lee. He said, he doesn't care about the stock price does today or tomorrow. He cares about long term, which is what we're all about. But he makes sure to know what's going on every day, because if he ever needs to sell, well, he needs to know what's going on with the environment. He needs to understand what's going on with the stock. He can't just disassociate from it. And so I believe in always understand what's going on. With regards to the Fed, I get the Fed has to do something, right? Or they feel they have to do something, right? It's their mandate to, push the, economy forward, make sure we don't get in a recession, all that good stuff. But I think it's also a little naive to think that you can raise interest rates and essentially slow down the economy to lower inflation. The reason I think it's naive is because, okay, you raise interest rates. Say you raise all the way up to 3%, like they're talking about by the end of I guess next year or sometime around there. Okay, you did all that. How do you fix the fact that Russia isn't sending oil out anymore to anyone, right? The EU, Germany is about to start, tapering off. Shanghai shut down for X amount of time. Beijing looks like they're going to start shutting down as well. No matter what you do with interest rates, you can't account for that. Like, there's nothing you can do to stop that. And that's going to be a fundamental supply-demand issue. And so I get they're trying to do something because they feel they have to do something. But the idea that you can fix this just purely based off of interest rates and that there's not other factors, I don't know. It just seems a little naive to me. There's so many other things. We're a global economy now. We're so intertwined. China, or I think, what was it? The U.S. sneezes and the rest of the world gets a cold, and that old idiom. But now it's the other way around, right? Something happens to China, we feel it. So I don't know. I think all this stuff with the Fed is a little overblown. It's something to pay attention to, but I think there's so much drama into it.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's also, like, the one thing that I intuitively can't get my head wrapped around, and this is probably just because I'm not very smart when it comes to this stuff, but I don't understand why increasing the interest rate actually lowers inflation. And I get there's mechanics behind it. Like, I've read it and I've researched it. I sort of understand that. But wouldn't we better served? Wouldn't we be better served to have a structure where we can develop technologies and innovations to lower the cost of these things, to lower inflation, instead of making it more expensive to borrow money? Like, why are we slowing down the economy? Why aren't we creating incentives and sort of structures, or whatever you want to call it, that's going to enable us to figure out how to lower the cost of the things that are going up? And if it's a labor issue, then figure out how to, maybe we need to raise wages. I don't know. Like what are the things we can do to invest the lowering of invest so it can lower the cost, instead of making it more expensive to borrow cash, and lower demand so that people have to lower their prices to get the product out. Yeah. Like, it seems counterintuitive to me. I don't really, it feels like a very old way of thinking about solving a problem. But again, what the hell do I know? I know the economy is super complex, but
yeah, I mean, it's like they say, it's a blunt instrument, and I don't know anything either, right? The only thing I know is the stuff I've researched. So I have no background in finance, but I do have a background in Google, and I Google a lot.
Hell yeah.
But
which is better than 80% of the people that call themselves experts, by the way.
Yeah. Hey, but you know what? It's easy to say, hey, I'm just an idiot who's an engineer talking finance. So it kind of gets you off the hook for any real thing. Go. But no, I think you're 100% right. I mean, the idea is slow down the economy. Then people get scared of a recession, so people stop spending, so demand comes down, so supply chains can catch up. That's the idea. But if you do all that, but again, and then China has a shutdown, you're not doing anything, because now all that demand you try to suck out, well, now there's even less supply because China is shut down, or because Europe's not getting oil from. It's this ripple effect that you can't, or a butterfly effect that you can't really account for anymore. I think you're right. In the 70s, when we were less of a global economy, that's one thing. But now you see all these auto manufacturers, they rely on China for their chips, or they rely on China for the minerals and material that goes into making batteries. And right, it's just we're too interdependent at this point to really
Yeah.
have that make a big effect. And I think you're 100% right. I think spending more time on focusing on innovation, and again, another thing that I think Elon's just 10 steps ahead of everyone. And manufacturing is going to be the thing in this country. I think it's going to come back. I think we're on the precipice of a renaissance for the what is it?
That would be amazing.
Well, I think it's going to happen. I mean,
Maybe
people are
Industrial
realizing,
Revolution Part Two
yeah,
kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah, like the boom of the 20s all over again, right?
Roaring '20s. Yeah.
Yeah, roaring 20. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what we're going to start seeing is people realize, okay, we can't be dependent on China for X, Y, Z. Europe is realizing, okay, we can't be reliant on other people for energy, and so we're going to start seeing people more localize things a lot more. And I think Tesla's a great example of that. Tesla is very big. We want to have manufacturing in the continent. We want to have very tight supply chains very closely, right? Teslas are the most American-made vehicles. Teslas are also the most Chinese-made vehicles. Teslas are going to be the most European-made vehicles,
Yep.
right? And I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of this. And I think that's going to help a lot of what you're talking about. But everybody isn't doing this yet. But it'll get there.
Yeah.
I think it will get there. And I think that will be very deflationary. And I think that will help the supply chains in a big way.
I agree 1,000%. I think in some ways I'm curious to see how much the work that Elon and his teams are doing to localize that supply chain and manufacturing, how much of that is going to be used as a blueprint for everyone else to do the same exact thing, right? Like how much of it is Elon setting an example? Like once say Q1 2023 comes out and Austin and Berlin are somewhat ramped up, say they're 80% ramped, and then Tesla's posting 45% gross margins on their cars, everybody's going to be like, holy crap, what the hell? How the hell did they do this? They're like, well, we just localize our supply chain and our manufacturing. Like, okay, cool. We're going to go ahead and do that, right? So I'm really curious to see how that narrative is going to shift as, as Elon and his companies become a blueprint, sort of a standard of, hey, this is how you execute on manufacturing. This is how you execute on making your company as profitable as possible, and how you can risk yourself from having to depend on things or outside forces or perhaps countries that are not operating in the same interests that you are, or the country that you're operating in are. How can you de-risk yourself? So and all that's going to do is going to create jobs.
Yeah.
It's going to create a ridiculous amount of jobs in those local economies, and they're going to become so self-sufficient. And then you bring on the advent of solar and batteries, where the energy theoretically could be unlimited and generated at a super low cost. If you have energy that's essentially free, you can do everything. You can do freaking everything. You can desalinate water. You can bring in seawater and turn it into fresh water for free, basically, because the energy is free. It comes from the sun. So, that's one example. But I think we're on the cusp, to your point, of getting to that point, and a lot of these innovations and technologies that are starting to appear are going to create this almost environment where localized economies are going to just completely boom. And that's why places like Austin and Texas and really the United States, I agree so much with what you said. They are the best position to make this happen, because it seems like, if you compare it to every other country that's out there right now, they have the most they have a really good combination of freedom of business, and the government, even though they get in the way sometimes, they still get out of the way. You don't have a place like China where they're like, no, you need to shut down for 2 weeks because we're afraid that this thing's going to get out of control. The United States is not, screw it. You don't even have to wear masks anymore in an airport, thank God. You don't have to be in a plane with this mask in your face anymore. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying you don't have to do that anymore. And you compare that to other countries and how businesses tend to operate in the United States, it seems to be the best. It seems to have the best combination of good things for the next 5-10 years, for there to be a boom in industry and the economy. So I agree 1,000% with what you said. I think it's a very exciting time to be an American, I think.
Oh, it's, and just to, go on that thread even deeper, if you look at it as far as being an American, let's say we stay in this inflationary period with high rates, right? High rates are bad for a lot of growth companies. Why? Because it's expensive to take out loans, all that good stuff. Yep. What's the one company that makes real things that they can pass on any inflation costs? What's the one company that essentially has no debt? And what's the one company that has so much demand they don't know what to do with. They can't keep up, and that's all Tesla. Every single time, every single day, right? I
Yep.
mean, it's unreal. I mean, Tesla. Again, it's
There's
almost
no
like they
better
can see into
investment.
the future. No, there. I
Yeah.
look
There's no
so
better
hard.
investment.
I try to find something better. I do. Risk reward, it's not there. A basic model, you can go with 25% gross margins. You can say that they're only selling their vehicles for 40,000 vehicle or $40,000 a vehicle. They only ever make 5 million vehicles, and the valuation's insane. It's
Yeah.
insane. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a no brainer. I mean, I've seen some of your models. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I remember seeing some of your numbers. I was like, oh, all right,
The numbers are big. They're big,
yeah,
boy. I think 2030, I have it at like 20 some odd $1,000. Like
okay,
with the without the whatever split's going to happen here soon. But um, yeah, it all comes down to that. You're so right. The fundamentals of the company as a car maker are already ridiculous. And then you layer in full self driving, the bot, solar and batteries, which no one's talking about, utility scale batteries. God knows what else they're going to come out with, right? It becomes, and we've talked about it so many times in the community, but it really, the profound nature of it is still not understood by the majority of the population.
yeah,
I don't think they get it. They still to this point don't get it because I think folks are used to, well, wait and see. Execute first, show me that you can do this, and then I'm going to put money into your company, which is kind of what happened with Tesla in, say, late 2019, 2020, where, it went from that $300 to $1,000 pre-split, and then it went up to 2,000, and then the split happened, right? So it had to happen, and then people are like, okay, it looks like it's going to happen. So that's what people are waiting for. But that's why folks that like in the Tesla community, yourself and I and others that are fairly confident that the execution is going to happen, this becomes a ridiculous, not investment advice. This becomes a very good investing opportunity because it's way more likely than not that this is going to happen. And if it does happen, the outsized gains you get from that investment are just as good, if not better, than literally anything else on planet Earth. So
yeah,
that, and if you are able to generate an income and you're able to safeguard any money that you put in and it potentially fails, then it becomes a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you invest in Tesla? Like, even if you hate the company, why wouldn't you invest in Tesla? It just becomes an almost like a bad financial decision to not invest in Tesla because its risk reward ratio is so skewed to reward, especially if you can generate an income. I don't know. That's my
yeah.
soapbox. I'm gonna
I
get off
mean,
of
on that
it.
same note, I mean, ignore the
Yeah.
valuations. Ignore all the
Yeah.
valuations. Forget all those. Just look at this last Q1. Tesla had higher net income than Ford or GM. Tesla
Yeah.
also has no debt, and they're printing money, and they're essentially making 5x less vehicles than they are. So why
Yeah.
would you ever invest in another auto manufacturer at this
With two
point?
factories, with half of their factories barely making any cars.
Yeah, yeah, and more than half not right because Shanghai is
More than
about to
half. Yeah.
expand, and there's a new
You're
Shanghai
right.
factory coming online. So I mean, it's
Yeah.
so if those are just the number, like forget valuation. That's all just the health of the business. It makes no sense to invest in any other auto. Not investment advice. I'm just an engineer.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do I know?
Yeah.
But but yeah,
Yeah, I'm curious. Like when like say, did you see this whole chart with like the S&P and Moody's were still rating Tesla as like basically junk
yeah,
investment grade, or they were below? Like I'm wondering, like that has to change at some point. That it has to change. I don't care how corrupt they are. Like literally, they would lose the trust of every single customer they have if they don't change the rating at some point. So I'm curious to see, like, once it becomes common knowledge and accepted by the investment community and your, I don't know, your Warren Buffett's, whatever you want to call it, the big money guys that tend to invest in things that they're like, well, it's a lower multiple, it's
hmm,
a they're going to be around for a long time. Like once they understand that this is a company that's going to be around for a long time, and it's going to generate cash, which theoretically is going to be at a premium here in the coming years as interest rates go up and it becomes more expensive to borrow that cash, and then you have a company that's making a lot of it through their products. Like why when are those people going to jump on board, and what percentage of those people are in the stock now? And if a majority of them still not in the stock, once they come on the stock, like, you don't think the stock's going to go up?
yeah,
Of course the stock's going to go up, and those people are going to just, once they have their teeth and they're causing it, I don't think they're going to really let go for a really long time, because the runway of the products and the growth and the leadership that they have, and how they run the business, and how they've situated themselves with local production and local supply chains. It's yeah, my point is like, why everyone in the world should have at least some money in Tesla, because it just, because of that ability as a business to generate profit and generate cash for its business and its investors. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think
I,
once that narrative changes, it's going to be bananas. It's
yeah,
going to be crazy.
it's funny. I mean, whether it's the junk rating that Tesla still has, or like yesterday, Rob Maurer had to tweet to Yahoo Finance to update Tesla's EPS and PE almost 3 weeks after their earnings. And all right, maybe it's a coincidence. I don't know
That
for a
intern's
fact
getting
this is what.
fired.
Yeah, yeah, right. Maybe it's a coincidence, but Yahoo Finance went ahead and like an hour later changed it. Maybe it's a
Yeah,
coincidence, but it's just that can't be like it. So, and even today, I was watching CNBC, and based on all these analysts, their top companies to invest in for 2022 and 2023, Tesla wasn't even up there. Microsoft was up there. Netflix was up there. It's like, this is crazy. Like,
yeah,
people still don't get it, and that explains why we're under $1,000 a share right now. We are less now than before this blowout earnings and before they announced the new Shanghai factory,
it's crazy.
and we're lower. Like,
It's crazy.
it's crazy. I mean, but again, you see people like what was his name? Emmett Pepper, some good soul, say, we could be here like this for the next 3 years, right? It
Yeah,
could happen. So do be prepared for that. But
for
I
sure.
personally don't think that's going to happen, especially with the stock split coming up. Any thoughts on that? The stock split, what might be, what could look like?
Yeah, I think this. I mean, the stock split in the past has shown to be a big catalyst for the stock, and people have, it's attracted more retail investors. I mean, I think longer term, I don't think the stock split is really the only thing it does. I think it brings more eyes to the stock. Maybe it's bringing the attention in for people, from people that usually wouldn't look at it for whatever reason, and now there's this event happening and they're starting to look into the financials, and maybe 10% of those people that are not looking at the stock are like, oh wait, holy crap, I didn't really understand the business, now I do, so I'm going to put an outsized percentage of my cash into the stock, right? So that could be one of the things that come out of the stock, the stock split rather. Yeah, I look at it from a perspective of when I used to work at Tesla, the stock split had to happen for people that took part of the ESPP, the Employee Stock Purchase Program. That is the only way for them. There's a large percentage of the workforce at Tesla is not, they're not these like, people that are making a ton of money. They're still making a good living. They're able to pay their bills and live their
Mhm.
life and stuff, and they have stock that they get paid in, but they still have bills they got to pay. They live a certain lifestyle and they want to pay it, and they can maybe only contribute a small percentage of their paycheck to this program. And if the stock price is over a certain price, and then after 6 months that money vests and they go to buy stock, if they're only able to save, say, $700 into that fund, and the stock's over $1,000, they can't even buy the stock because they
Yeah.
don't do fractional sharing, right? So I view it as a for me, the only good thing about the stock split, outside of maybe more eyes are brought to it, is that it gives employees that perhaps don't have as much money as some of the other folks at the company, the ability to invest additionally in Tesla with that 15% discount, whereas before they wouldn't have been able to do so. So, yeah, I just think it's a good thing that Tesla does for its employees, and it's a great practice that they should continue to do in the future.
Yeah. I mean, I always hear people talk about how the stock split doesn't add any value, which I guess on paper that's true. But I mean, I tend to hate things that are just on paper. I tend to like, look at the real world and talk to people and see what they're really saying.
Yeah,
And I know a lot of people. I mean, I talk to a lot of people coming out of like, NC State or Duke, or just college students who are looking to get into the workforce. And when they get into the workforce, right, they're learning about all these things and different companies and stuff like that. And of course, they're getting interested in investing because now they're making real money. They're out of college. They have a real job that's paying them something, and there's more
yeah,
money they've ever had in their life. And so now they want to get into investing. And I've
yeah,
heard so many of them talk about how Tesla just is so expensive. It's the idea for them to put $1,000 for one share. I mean, I understand like it doesn't change the value of it, but
Yeah.
psychologically, yeah, I have one versus I have 10 or I have 20.
Right.
And I've had a lot of them tell me, like if Tesla was less, they would buy. And it's the same math. I get it. Trust me, you're preaching to the choir when it comes to math. But
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a real thing with psychology. It's a real
True.
thing. And
It's true.
people, I think if it drops down, you're going to see a lot of people buy into it, a lot of people who would love to buy into it. And then that's where that, wheel starts going, because now you're invested. Now you kind of become a Tesla fan, and then you see how quickly that rabbit hole goes down. Then you start opening your eyes and you start finding channels like yours or Warren Redlick's, and you start seeing these numbers and you see these models, and it's not complicated models, right? It's
Yeah.
actually really easy to model Tesla, and you start seeing
Yeah.
this, and it's like, oh my goodness, I need to put
Yeah.
everything into this, and it just starts to happen. Not investment advice, but I think that's a big part of what stock split can do. ESPP, 100%, right? I mean, you got to take care of the employees, but I do think there's this other effect, and I think that's why we tend to see stock splits become a catalyst. It's because then people can get in, people can get passionate, and people have a stake in the game that they feel is more than just one share, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it makes a difference. To say I have 100 shares of Tesla versus 10 shares, that's, it makes you feel like you have something, even if it's worth the same
Yeah.
amount.
That's a great point. The one thing we did while I was at Tesla at the facility we worked at is, because people would have a lot of questions about the ESPP. So then I started doing this stock class. I would during the day we would bring in like groups of 5 or 6 people, and then during their breaks or whatever, and then for say half an hour to 45 minutes, I would sit down and I would literally explain to them what a stock price is. And it really is, it's the value or the market cap of a company divided by the number of shares, right? And so I really, and I was 80 to 90% of those people, I would almost say every single one of them, like if you take the whole population of the warehouse that I worked at, I would say 95% plus of those people didn't understand the correlation between stock price and market cap.
Mm-hmm.
They would literally take stock price and they would compare it to a different company. So say Apple is like 150, or I don't even follow the price, but 150, $200, and then it would look at Tesla and it's $1,000. Say they would say, oh, Tesla is worth 5 times more than Apple, but Apple sells a billion phones a year or whatever. Why is Tesla valued so much? I'm like, well, that's not really that number you want to look at. The number you want to look at is the market cap. The market cap is the value, the actual value of the company, and then the share price is the division of that market cap. It's like that, how that pie is broken out. And like people were like, whoa, that blew my mind. And then back in those days, Tesla market cap was like 50 billion, 60 billion. And the thing I would love to do is I would take the Tesla market cap and I would compare it to the Apple market cap at the time. I think Apple was like 1.5 billion or close to 2 billion or something. I was like, Tesla is worth 50 billion or a trillion.
Yeah.
Yeah, 50 billion for Tesla, and Apple is worth 1.5 trillion or almost 2 trillion. Do you think Tesla will eventually be as big as Apple? Right? Like, do that thought exercise in the next 10 years. And a lot of them would say, you know what? It could be if everybody, like, if say a bunch of people buy Teslas and they become as big as Volkswagen and this full self-driving works, it could be. I'm like, okay, cool. So if that's the case, how much money will you make on Tesla if it becomes Apple's valuation? Okay, so 2 billion or 2 trillion, 50. Okay, so that's like, wow, that's like, whatever that math is, 40x, whatever it is. Like, oh, wow, okay, cool, now I get it, right? And that's what got their wheels turning. So it was fascinating to see, and I wish more people, you're 100% right. There is a significant percentage of the population that doesn't quite understand what a valuation is in the stock market. Like, what is an actual valuation of a stock and how much it's worth versus its peers. I wish there was more education around it, but that's why your channel exists, right? And that's why the channel exists.
No, that's a great point. I mean, I have there's a couple of people who are like my mentees, and inevitably, it's kind of hard not to talk about some things that just naturally come up. And so investing tends to come up. And as you were speaking, I was thinking, what would be a good way to just represent market cap versus stock price would be to get 100 $1 bills, and then to get 10 $10 bills, and then get 5 $20 bills, and say which one is more expensive.
Right.
right? That
Exactly.
it's irrelevant, right? It's the market cap that matters, to your point. And I can split this up in any way, but the market cap was what that's yeah, that's a yeah. I think I'm
That's
gonna
exactly right.
use that next time I talk to someone about that. But
Good. I think
it's a
that's going to
great
be
point.
very impactful. It's going to be
Yeah,
very impactful.
it is because I mean, again, you can feel like you got more money because you have 100 singles than a
Right.
$100 bill, but you don't. But I can
Yeah.
understand the
One's
feeling.
going to incentivize you to go to the strip club. The other one's going to incentivize you to not. Right. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. You're 100
Yeah.
percent right though. I think that's going to be very impactful. I think sort of looking at it that way is exactly right.
No.
It's exactly right. It's going to drive home the message really, really well.
Do do you have any? So obviously we saw those 10Ks come out, and investor day or analyst day, shareholder meeting has been announced. Do you have any thoughts on what might be discussed or any extra things that might be talked about there?
I think Elon's new compensation plan will probably be released around that time. I think one of my theories is that the board and Elon, like, and I think it's somehow tied to Master Plan Part Three.
Mm.
So I think Master Plan Part Three and his compensation package, his new
Ah,
one, are somehow going to be intertwined. You
that's a
know,
good point.
because
That's a good
Elon,
point.
I think what the board is waiting for Elon is like, okay, Elon, like we want to, I think this year he's done with his existing. He's going to hit every tranche basically,
Yeah.
and he's going to need a new compensation plan. And the board's probably like, Elon, we need to know what your vision is so that we can sit down and compensate you for it, right? Like, help us understand where you're taking this, and let us put the carrots in front of you so that you have some sort of incentive to hit them, right? So I think that's what Master Plan Part Three is. And then once Elon finishes Master Plan Part Three, he's gonna, before he gives it to the public, he's gonna give it to the board, and the board are gonna look at it, and they're gonna be like, okay, cool. So mining or whatever the hell the Master Plan Part Three is going to be. They're going to set some goals for him for the next 5 to 10 years, and then all that entire thing is going to be released at the investor at the June investor thing. I think that's my theory. It just makes sense. It makes sense. He's already talked about Master Plan Part Three, that he's working on it, and he needs a compensation plan for that Master Plan Part Three to come to fruition. So
Yeah.
that's my theory.
That's a great point. I mean, without the master plan, how can you create his compensation? Because
Right.
they're directly tied, right? So,
Exactly.
honestly, the way they structured his incentive plan was just it was genius. I mean,
Yeah.
and anyone who would have known what they were looking for would have known. Which kind of takes me back to the Q1 earnings call when he talked about Optimus. He said, if you're listening carefully, he's pretty much saying like, I'm telling you right now, this can be really big. And
Yeah.
it's when you have the guy who's been just predicting the future and making it reality, predicting future, making it reality. It's like, okay, here's this guy just blatantly, as bluntly as possible, telling you, listen carefully. I'm telling you how to listen. I'm telling you when to
Yeah.
listen right now.
Yeah.
I can't make this any more obvious for any of
Yeah.
you.
It's happening, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do
Exactly.
do you have FSD beta?
I do.
What are your thoughts on FSD beta?
Yeah. So I've had it. I had it as an employee. I had the version before it went out to the rest, like to the public. So I was driving it pretty early on, and it's improved dramatically. It's improved dramatically. So, what's interesting about FSD beta is that there's still parts where it doesn't handle certain things as a human would, right? It still handles them safely, but it's jarring because a human is not expecting that behavior. So, for example, like you're in a 2 lane road and it's merging to one, and the markings aren't really well marked. A human will just you just have your foot on the accelerator, you just go, right? Like, okay, like there's no car here, I'm just going to go. The car's still extremely safe because remember the primary reason, the primary directive for the car is not to crash
Yeah.
and not to injure the passengers, right? So under that assumption, the car is going to behave very different than a human. A human's primary directive is, I need to get to point B as quickly as humanly possible. Usually when you're in a car, at least the way I am, I think about safety. Of course, I think about my safety, but it's almost like 1A and 1B, with like point B as quickly as possible and I need to do it safely. The car is 1A, 1B, 1C, 2A, 2B, 2C is all safety, right?
Yeah.
So under that scenario, the car is going to behave very, very differently. What's really interesting is in situations where the FSD beta is on and I'm letting the car do its thing, whenever it seems like it's going to do something weird or it's going to behave a certain way, if I just hit the accelerator and I just push the car along, it will still navigate around it, and it's way more natural. It's
Mm.
way, way more natural. So I really think the one of the primary things that Tesla, once they figure out, is once they get the acceleration and the braking sort of behavior to be similar or exactly like a human's, I think full self-driving beta will immediately turn from something that people are skeptical from seeing to, oh wow, this is actually way closer than we think. It's just that behavior because the car is being a lot safer than a human would. Um,
Gotcha.
and anybody who has FSD beta, I would encourage them to do the same thing. Like, there's a lot of videos online of people, right or wrong, and I'm glad that there's a lot of coverage, but you can see the car being really slow, really cautious, or doing something really stupid almost in a scenario where it's just standing there or it's going really, really slowly. Like, if they just hit the accelerator pedal, I bet you the car would do exactly the right behavior. It's just being really, really careful. And that data set of you hitting the accelerator is
Yeah.
data that the FSD beta team gets and like, okay, this is how it should behave. So I'm wondering like how many times the testers aren't actually doing the inputs that are required, because the inputs are the things that are going to fix the system and make it better. So that's a separate discussion. But I think it's way closer than people think. Elon says this year level 4, I believe him. I really do. I think that behavior, that acceleration behavior, once they get around that, I think it's going to be way, way, way closer to a finished product. And then as more data comes in through the fleet, I think level four, I'm going to say level 4 in the United States in most situations will be achievable. And maybe what they'll do for next year, they'll perhaps geofence level 4 to say areas that they're comfortable in or certain weather conditions. And then as more data gets brought in for those exceptions, then they'll start opening up the geofence or those things, those limitations become broader. And then, you could have a thing where you have a robotaxi fleet in certain markets starting next year, and then each year gets expanded to more and more markets, and then within 5 to 10 years, every single market has a robotaxi network that's been phased in. And so how I correlate that to the stock valuation is I believe once investors start to see that full self-driving is a legitimate solution for, say, at least 80% of the world's population, then that is when the stock valuation goes from car company to software as a service plus car company, in
Yeah.
the form of full self-driving. So you need that first market to open up with full self-driving. And once the good reviews come in, and once the utility of it is obvious, and then once you can see that very quick iteration and expansion of the service, the stock is going to go, in my opinion, not investment advice, I think the stock will double, triple, quadruple, quintuple from that point forward.
Yeah, no, I could see it playing out like that too. And I do think that's how. I don't think it's just gonna be, an update goes out and now we have robo taxis everywhere. I think it'll be exactly how you said. It'll be
Phased.
region by region. They'll keep. I mean, it's all about safety, right? At the end of the day, so
Exactly.
we can't risk anything. So maybe it starts in like Sunnyvale or Palo Alto, right? Because it's Elon said recently how good it is there. Maybe after that goes to San Fran, and then maybe then San Diego, maybe then Austin. And I think seeing how slow Waymo goes from Chandler to San Fran, seeing how slow Cruise goes from just a portion of San Fran to a little bit of a bigger portion of San Fran. And then you have Tesla goes, all right, this month we're doing it just like insurance, Tesla insurance, right? You see how quickly that's growing. It's going to be like that. And I agree with you. That's when people will be like, oh, okay, well, Tesla just leapfrogged them. Exactly what Elon said. So that's great to hear from, especially from someone who's got beta. It definitely, it's hard watching all the videos. I mean, I watch a lot of FSD beta videos, and it's hard watching some people use it because I'll see like interventions, especially when people are recording, right? Because they're recording and your mind's not always on the drive. Sometimes you're focusing, you're talking, and you'll see like a phantom brake, or they'll call it a phantom brake. And, I'm watching and I can see, and I rewind, and right, I have the benefit of, rewinding on like them, but it's like, no, this is what happened. it's very clear that this individual, kind of shifted this way. It looked like they were going to cross the crosswalk, but they didn't. I
Yeah.
like that was a good move. It was a good. That wasn't like a mistake. And I think
Those are hard to see in person, though. That's the thing.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
split second, micros. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's why Tesla is okay with all this footage being out there, because they can truly see if the behavior of the car is matching their expectations.
Yeah.
If their expectation is to do that kind of behavior because they have a certain parameter built in that takes safety into account, that they can be like, it's not that the system isn't working correctly, is that the system is working exactly how it should, but now they have to make it more human-like, or at least
Mm-hmm.
something that guarantees that the person will have a good experience from point A to point B, right?
Yeah.
So it becomes a much different discussion. Whereas, humans driving is such a personal thing, I feel like, and that's
It
another
is.
like another thing that people have to get used to, I think, at some point, is that humans drive in a very specific way. And I know I'm not going to name any names, but I have certain friends that when I get into a car with them, I'm like, oh crap, I should drive,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
so it's very personal. Like everyone thinks they're the best driver. And then when you get into a car with somebody else and they do something stupid, I'm like, I wouldn't have done that. What the hell are you doing? When a software is doing that, it's like you don't have someone that you can lock eyes with and be like, you're an idiot. Why the hell did you do that? It's like, oh my God, this thing's trying to kill me, right? The robots are coming, right? So it's a very different psychological experience. I think there's going to be an adjustment period for that, but I think the economics of it are going to be truly the thing that's going to bring its quick adoption. When you have a car that can drive itself and it doesn't need a driver and it's super safe and it's super cheap to run, and once that price of that robotaxi is a fraction of what you would pay for Uber, then even if it drives a little weird, but it still gets you to point B in a similar amount of time, but at a quarter of the cost, you're going to take that option 100% of the time. It all
Yeah.
comes down to cost when it comes to these things, right? So that's going to be the thing that's going to drive its adoption for
Yeah.
sure. And
And,
once people get used to that quirkiness thing of it, yeah,
and even then, I think it's a lot different if you're sitting in the back of a vehicle, or if your mindset isn't, I'm in this thing where people are ready to take over, and your mindset's in, I'm a robo taxi. It changes. We ride subways where we're holding
100%.
on and we're moving like this. Like
Yeah.
we know what to expect already. Our mindset is there. It's just, this is different because we see a human behind the wheel, so we have certain things we want. And you're right, our biases are so different. I mean, I could guarantee you, if I had two of me, if I could clone myself, and I was sitting in the driver's seat and I was sitting in the passenger seat and I was driving, just the fact that my perception is different, the way I see the lanes, the other things I see, I would probably look at myself and say, hey, are you an idiot? Why'd you do that? Hey, you didn't see that? Like, I'm sure it would be happening just to my own
100%.
self. Yeah.
100%. I mean, even just take like being on a plane through turbulence. There's a lot of
Yes.
nervous flyers. I was a very nervous flyer. And now I'm like, it's turbulence. Who cares? Like, it's like the plane's barely going like this, and it feels like it's like the pilot's losing control. But then you look at it from a third-person view of the plane, it's like this. It's like, it's just chilling. It's no different than experiencing turbulence on an airplane. It's wild.
It's funny. I'm an asshole. I'm at the point now where like I'm like you, like it's turbulence. Like, oh, it's no big deal. but my fiance sometimes I can see her like clench a little bit. And I'm the asshole. I'll like grab her hand and I'll like go closer. I'll whisper in her ear, "Are you scared?"
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Not nice at all.
She must really love you, bro. Oh my goodness.
I got a disturbing sense of humor. Yeah, it's yeah.
That's so funny.
But sticking on full self-driving, I mean, something.
Yeah.
And this is why, again, I encourage people, if you invest in anything, you got to really follow it and do your homework. Part of doing homework with Tesla is watching FSD videos, in my opinion, and FSD beta. And I watch a lot. I mean, I watch a stupid amount. And a lot of what I watch are Omar's videos from Omar's catalog. Mm-hmm. And it's, even though I've never been in FSD, I can see the immense change in it. If for no other reason, because I think it started around December maybe, but he was not having zero disengagement drives. And now, seeing how many zero disengagement drives he's having, it's absolutely insane. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you seeing that?
Yeah, I not as much. I am seeing an improvement in my area for sure, but I definitely have disengagements 100%. But The reason why is because have you ever been in Texas? Like, have you ever driven around
Yeah,
this area?
weird
Yeah,
highways.
weird highways, a lot of unprotected left turns. The way since it's not single stack, there's a lot of roads where the car can't make up its mind if it's going to go what is it, full self driving or the other one, navigate on autopilot. So it's switching between those two, and it can't figure out which one it wants. And navigate on autopilot is not nearly as good as full self driving from a behavior perspective
Mm,
and predictive sort of things. Like it's always in the wrong lane. It's a mess. So full self driving, so it can't decide, so I can't even run full self driving in the full thing. And then the roads here are very different from the ones in California, and there's a lot of places where the markings are like they are confusing to a human. Like I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to do here? Like I don't even know what the hell I'm supposed to do here. So there's that. There's also that level. But I've seen very good improvement. So like if the road is marked even relatively well, I don't have to do anything. It just behaves correctly 100% of the time. Almost, I would say 99.9% of the time. If the roads are not well marked and you're in a situation where there's a lot of traffic and a lot of pedestrian traffic, and it's like a weird situation even for a human, that's when I usually would have to take over. I would still allow the car to do its thing, and if I can push it along to get it to where it needs to go, I will definitely push it along. But there are times where I have to take over because I'm like, this is just not it hasn't figured this out yet, and I have to take over.
mm-hmm.
But those are happening less and less, less and less. Elon has talked about a big release coming out, I think this week
Yeah,
or the week after,
I think this
which
week.
it's probably going to be in 4 weeks,
Yeah, yeah,
realistically.
yeah, 2 weeks, right?
But
Yeah.
yeah, but regardless, it's super, super close. So I'm crossing my fingers that's single stack. And if that's single stack with whatever improvements they have in the full self driving module that they've made, man, I'm hoping like as soon as that comes out, I'm gonna go out there. Single stack comes out, I'm just gonna do a bunch of drives with it and see how it behaves. Because ultimately, I think if that behaves even say relatively well, then the runway for full self driving being complete this year becomes very clear,
Mm-hmm.
and like feature complete for this year rather becomes very clear. So I'm very excited to see that. I'm crossing my fingers it's single stack this week or next week or whatever, because I think
Yeah.
that's going to be a game changer, especially
It
for my area.
yeah. It seems like it might be, or even if it's not, whatever it is. I mean, he said it's a big one, right? I mean, he said it's a big
Mm-hmm.
release, and we've seen since we've really been seeing it since what, last quarter, when they first talked about or that was the first time we really got the sense that they're confident about FSD this year.
Yeah,
And then, I mean, it wasn't just Elon, right? You heard Drew, you heard Zach talking about it. And then
yeah,
this quarter, I mean, not only did they double down on it, they talked about being in volume production for robo taxis by 2024.
I
That
know.
insinuates production in 2023 and having it live. So obviously they have alpha versions, or at least Elon has alpha version. So you just have to think they're seeing stuff that we don't see yet, because we have, different generation software, different iterations. You have to believe that there's something they're seeing this is getting very close, or the taper off of disengagements. I mean, this is where it becomes kind of a guesswork, right, or magic, or faith, or belief, or whatever you want to call it, in what they're doing. But I I find it very hard to believe you would see Zach and Drew be this optimistic and confident if there wasn't something big happening that they can see themselves.
You want to hear my crazy theory?
I would love to.
I think the reason why Elon is buying Twitter is because he now has the bandwidth to do so, and one of the biggest things that was taking up his bandwidth was solving full self driving. And now that full self driving is basically solved, he can pay attention to Twitter. I think
Wow.
that is the action, because Elon works from a standpoint of bandwidth, right? How many times in the past has he talked about like I have too much on my plate? I wish he talked about literally if there was a better CEO that could take over Tesla, please bring him in, and you could see that dude was literally run down. Now, if you look at him in interviews, the whole Met Gala thing,
Yep.
on the quarterly earnings, and just the the um the interview he did with Ted, like his public on Twitter, he's like shit posting all the time. Like this to me, it comes across as somebody who is in a part time of his life that is not as stressful as it was, And knowing how Elon behaves, if he has big goals in his mind and he's trying to solve problems, he's going to put his all to make that happen. And you don't go out and buy one of the biggest social media companies in the world that's going to bring you a ton of shit from every single angle, politicians, corporations, whatever. You don't do that, and you don't become the largest stakeholder and take it private and become its de facto CEO unless you have bandwidth. And full self-driving, the entire valuation model of Tesla in the future is highly dependent on full self-driving. So why in the hell would you distract yourself with Twitter unless you're confident that the things that you're working on are going to get done? Right? So him buying Twitter, to me, is a direct indication that full self-driving is going to be solved.
Can,
That's my crazy theory.
can I add to that theory?
Yeah,
It also explains why Andrej Karpathy went ahead and took a sabbatical.
agreed.
It lines up exactly with what you're saying. Why else would he all of a sudden take a sabbatical now? The same time where you're talking about Elon is almost happier, more joyful, more playful, doing more interviews, right? I mean, going to the Met Gala. I mean, hey, I'll buy into that conspiracy theory any day.
Tesla's stacked with talent, man. That's one thing I can say. Having worked there for over 4 years, there is the it has the concentration of the most intelligent, hardworking, best problem solvers in the world, and you would be mistaken to think that Elon and Tesla aren't able to solve problems once they're focused on it. Every single thing that they've worked on that they wanted to solve, they've solved, and it's just a question of when. And
Yeah.
him buying Twitter, I really think that is the indication that tells me that full self-driving is essentially done, and it's just a matter of following the process to implement it for society. That's it.
Do
That's
do
it.
you think Elon will be CEO of Twitter, or do you think, even better question, forget that question. Do you think Elon will be able to fix Twitter, or at least make it where the majority of people like what's happening with Twitter?
I think so. I think
Yeah.
so. I think the biggest reason why, again, is because I think if Elon sets his sights on something, it gets done every time. It really does. He's late on stuff, but it does get done. I think he's already a magnet for the best talent in the world. And if once he puts that best talent in the world along with himself to solving the Twitter problem, whatever that is, it will get solved. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think there's true potential for Twitter to become that town square that he talks about, where the truth and trust are paramount, and it becomes a place for folks to exchange those truths and information and talk about them, and have a forum where everybody can sit down and have those discussions openly and freely, and allow society to really build the future through the internet, through some sort of online forum. Yeah, 100%. I mean,
Yeah.
that's that. I don't even like think about that anymore. I'm like, once Elon pays attention to something, I'm like, okay, it's gonna get solved.
Yeah,
Yeah, they'll figure it
yeah,
out.
exactly.
They'll
Yeah.
figure it out. Dude, like, how many times have I seen at Tesla, like, literally a million things we faced that seemed impossible, and all you had to do was just surround yourself with the right people, and truly sit down and outline, okay, what are the steps we need to take to make this happen. And that sort of idiom that Elon's, I'm going to use that word. You give me that
Yeah,
idiom
yeah, yeah.
word. I appreciate that. I knew what it was, but I've never used it in my vocabulary. But I'm going to start.
Hey, that's a
Because of
great
you.
turnaround.
It
That's a great
is.
turnaround.
But
Uh,
if it's within the bounds of physics, if physics allows it, it's possible.
yeah.
If there's no laws of physics that say that this is impossible, it's there. There is a way to do it, and I don't know if there is anything in the laws of physics that would say that having a Twitter that serves 80% of the people to be somewhere that people trust, and they can have an open forum of free speech, based on the laws for each specific country, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's doable. It's 100% doable. It's just a matter of effort and the right talent around that problem.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I love what you said before about, how Tesla has it's a magnet for all this talent. Something
Yeah,
I talk about nonstop on my channel. You're not investing in Tesla. You're not investing in a car company. You're invested in the people. You're investing in
exactly.
Elon, and you're investing in all the people Elon attracts. And again, like,
Exactly.
you don't have to be a rocket scientist, no pun intended, to invest sometimes. I mean, go to your mall. What places are packed? Apple stores always packed. Tesla
Yeah.
showrooms always packed. Starbucks
Yeah.
always packed. Right? I mean, I go to the airport. I'll go out of my way to find a Starbucks before I go to some other random coffee shop. Right? I
You're the
want my
guy that's in
Starbucks.
the line in line. Your
Yeah.
flight leaves in 20 minutes. You're like, I need my coffee.
I'm the guy. Actually, I'm the guy sitting there in line with my fiance saying, "Look at us. We're just in a line. We're all just sheep." Like, oh, so aware of it, yet still doing it. I'm that guy.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, open your
They make
door,
good
go
coffee, man.
outside. Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Open your door
Yeah.
and go outside. How many Teslas do you see everywhere? I mean, it doesn't take rocket science to figure this out. Where's all the talent going? I mean, that's what you need to invest in. So yeah,
100%.
I'm with you.
Couldn't agree more.
Farzad, I could talk to you forever. It's been 2 hours now coming up. Okay. Well,
Damn.
before we get off, actually,
Yeah.
looks like we're ripping up higher. It's 2 p.m.
Oh, shit.
I guess news is out, so I don't
What
know what the
happened?
news is.
Should we look it up? Let
Yeah,
me see.
let me see if I can pull it up.
What is the Fed doing? Let me see. I feel like does Twitter on desktop? I feel like it never gives me the notifications right away. It's a pain in the ass.
Here we go. Fed raises rates by 0.5 percentage point, the biggest hike in 2
Okay.
decades. I guess I can share my screen.
Is that still was the market baking in 75?
No, I think the market is baking half a percent or 50 basis point, a total of 75. So it's 25 last time, 50 this time. So let's see if
Yeah, so it went up. It's sold off a little bit. It went up to 927. It's at 924, right? 918. Okay. It's gonna come back 920. Yeah, it's bouncing around. It's bouncing
okay.
around. What's the S&P doing?
So coming months with a possible. Oh, okay. So it says markets now expect the central bank to continue raising rates aggressively in the coming months with a possible 75 basis point hike on the table for June. Wednesday rate hike will push the federal funds rate to 75 to 1. Okay. All right. So
Okay.
that's pretty much all we're probably going to hear until he speaks at 2:30. And that's where we'll really start seeing the fireworks.
Yeah. So it looks like we had a big jump at 201, and then it's sort of selling off right now in the next tick. Okay. Yeah, we'll see. I was thinking about doing a live stream later. I usually do live streams on Wednesdays, but I think I'm not going to do one today because everyone's going to be so focused on this stuff.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to focus on it too. So anyway,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
just logistics. Anyway. Okay.
on that note, hey, seriously, thank you for hopping on. It's great to
course,
talk to
man.
like-minded people who just, I can tell you're just a good soul. So really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. Likewise, I super enjoyed our conversation. You're welcome on my channel at any time. I would love to have you on and continue this discussion. I really think, dude, like I literally, I think I could have gone for like the whole day, like you said,
Yeah.
literally the whole day. There's so much meat there on the stuff that we talked about. But great meeting you, man. It's again yet another person I've met in this community that I have a lot of shared experiences with, and yeah, man, you're a great person, I can tell. And if you're ever in Austin, let me know. I'll take you out for a beer or some food or whatever. And yeah, man, thank you so much for having me on again.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to be on your show, and I plan on going to a shareholder meeting, so I will be in
Nice.
Austin. So
Awesome.
so
All right,
one
let's
way or
sync up
another, I'll
then.
be there. All right, sounds good,
Perfect.
brother. Appreciate it.
All right, brother.
Peace.
Take it easy, man. Thank you.